wife said,
Okay. All right.
They're going to take us live on Facebook, so watch the links.
Okay.
And then we will be live here. Okay, I guess we're live.
Welcome, everyone, to the October Mayor's Update. And my guest today is Shannon Landauer, who is the president and CEO of the Iowa Lakes Corridor. And Shannon has been on the job, I think, probably about a year and a half now.
not quite, but close, yeah.
Close to there, and she came to Northwest Iowa, although some would say Carroll is Northwest Iowa, but she was the director of the Chamber of Commerce in Carroll, Iowa. And just a couple of things from my observation about the corridor. And the Iowa Lakes Corridor is one of the City of Spencer's primary economic development partners. And it's and Shannon can talk a little bit more about this, but the corridor envelops 4 counties and really works with all of the communities within those 4 counties on a host of economic development issues, and whether they're large or small. I know that Shannon and her team have been involved in locating and helping smaller businesses here in Spencer, but also with some large manufacturing businesses and doing some things for them. So they have a wide array of responsibilities. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon, and she's going to talk a little bit about the corridor and what they've been up to recently.
Yes, thank you. It's good to be able to share with everyone really what it is that the corridor is doing and what we've been up to lately. So the Iowa Lakes Corridor is an entity that serves Buena Vista, Clay, Dickinson, and Emmett counties. We are the professional economic development organization for those areas in that we are fully staffed with trained economic development professionals. We have Joanne Fallon, who focuses on business retention and expansion efforts as well as workforce. And Alyssa Peterson is our communications and finance director. Currently, our VP of business development position is open. We are looking for an excellent candidate to join our team. But with that, truly the purpose of economic development is expansion of the tax base. So as city budgets and county budgets never tend to go down, we really either raise taxes or we expand who's paying in to cover those expenses of those municipalities and counties. So our job is really the growth of that tax base, and that's done through new business, expansion of existing business, and certainly when we see volume of housing development, that creates an impact too with our local valuation. So that's really ultimately the driving force behind our work is that mentality of growth. We do that primarily through business retention and expansion. We see a lot of industry work, small business work. We also have a business attraction strategy, and we work with entrepreneurship. We work with workforce development, housing development. Part of what I love about economic development truly is that no strategy is the same by any communities. So every community has its own personality, its own goals, its own assets. And so really the work that we do accommodates that individual community. As of recent, a lot of the work we do is really an information partner. We've seen the Iowa Economic Development Authority and USDA really get aggressive with their business investments through programs such as housing and childcare, the butchery program that we've seen, lots of things as IEDA listens to what our communities and our markets are needing so that businesses can grow. They've developed programming to accommodate that. So that's really a little bit of the basic functionality of our team. But I thought we'd start with just talking a little bit about Manufacturing Week and giving an update. We celebrated Manufacturing Day the first Friday of October. We had our mayors from our cities and our counties gathered and signed proclamations really to celebrate manufacturing throughout the corridor region and the impact that it has. It's not just that job creation element, it's that charitable giving and it's that community involvement, and those industries really take pride in helping to grow our communities and inform that identity, while they also have their own individual visions for growth. And we've seen some hardship, whether it be supply chain issues, what COVID has brought to our companies, inflationary issues. Certainly the employment conversation is big right now in the corridor. But at the same time, they're innovating and they're finding ways to continue forward with their growth goals and accommodating markets. And so we felt like this year was a perfect time to really go all out and celebrating our manufacturers. So again, we started with that proclamation signing, and the camaraderie it creates when you get community and leaders in the room is just so much fun. We also put together a video series that really highlights some of the projects that we've seen in our communities, because we've got generational manufacturers within the region, but also some that are new, such as Godbersons. We'll talk about, they just came in, as Kent told us, right at the beginning of COVID. And so they're very new to our business and manufacturing community here in Spencer. So what we decided was we wanted to get out in those businesses and we wanted to showcase what they're doing. And it really is a two-way relationship. While we appreciate them opening their doors and letting us in and having that conversation, they and their teams really love getting to show off what they do. They have so much pride in their work. And within the corridor, our companies have global touch points. And it's just so exciting to really take a minute and focus on all of that. So on Monday of our manufacturing week, we visited Movero. They recently have had an expansion project both in Esterville and Armstrong that received Iowa Economic Development Authority tax credits. On Tuesday, we were here at Godbersons Metalworks in Spencer. Got to take a look at their facility. Again, they're fairly new. At Safeco in Milford on Wednesday, another new to the corridor company, just a few years in. And of course, Thursday, then we went down to Storm Lake and visited the Tyson feed mill and had a tour. So we started each tour with a welcome from our mayor. We overviewed the company and some of their recent projects, took a tour, and again, made some videos that we'll share with the public. Also, part of what was really exciting about that is not just having community leaders and business leaders coming together, we also had elected officials and some of their staff that joined us for those tours so that they were able to hear directly about some of the challenges that our companies are facing, but also to celebrate those victories with them.
Yeah, and if I can just interject here, Shannon, first of all, thank you for inviting me and the elected officials in Spencer to go on the Godbersons tour. It was very enlightening to go on that tour, to meet the Godbersons and also their employees. And their employees are some of the hardest working folks, I think, around, and they're very, very proud of the products that they turn out. So it was good for us as elected officials to see exactly what's going on that manufacturing floor in that particular industry, and something that I think we can be very proud of, because those are good jobs with good benefits, and I think that our community needs to understand that these are jobs that can really impact our entire community. These are folks that are paying taxes, they're buying houses, they're buying their groceries here in town, and that sort of thing. And if we can grow those smaller industries as a community, we're going to be much better off.
Right. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
So some of the stats and facts around manufacturing in Clay County, I absolutely love numbers and data, so thought I'd share a few things today. In Clay County, there's a total of 948 businesses. And of those, 38 are manufacturing facilities. Again, in Clay County, there's 10,100 employees, and just over 500 are in manufacturing positions. So then, stretching out and looking at the corridor as a whole, we have 3,300 businesses in the corridor region. 127 in total are manufacturing. And then again, of those 37,500 employees in the region, about 5,800. So, manufacturing, like ag, is very much part of the heartbeat of our region. And it's really amazing, again, in times of some challenge, to see the innovation coming forward and the investments being made. So, one other topic kind of related to Manufacturing Week I thought I'd touch on is our business retention and expansion work that's underway. We visited 55 companies this year throughout the corridor region. 22 of those were here in Clay County. And of those 55, 19 companies have expansion projects that are in the works in the next 24-month time frame. That represents $150 million in investment and 200 new positions. So, we like to talk about attraction projects, and sometimes those get attention, but when we have more of this controlled growth and at a controlled pace by these companies, that in itself is so significant collectively. So we're really excited with that as well. But another piece of manufacturers and how they find their employees, and we overcome some of that challenge, is really quality of place. So the corridor works with our partners. We support our chamber and our Main Street partners and the missions that they have. And, one of those things is retail. It certainly is workforce housing and childcare and all of those things. But just recently we talked about our retail data, and we think that while we hear our community talk about things they would love to have, whether it be retail shopping or restaurants or those types of things, we feel like our position is really to understand our retail picture with data. So, we took a look at what is our primary market, where are people coming from, and who is it that is buying within this market. And so, when we've done that, our population of Spencer is about 10,900, but the primary retail market is just under 70,000 people that really depend on Spencer to provide those needs. Also, the household income increases so that we become very attractive for retailers as we investigate that market, and we try to showcase why they should want to locate here in Spencer. Again, we really have data available. We often hear about Target, but the retailer data that Target gets is what we were able to use to develop this. So we know that it's fairly solid data that we have available. And what we do with it is critical, right? So we take this data of the market and we can show our existing businesses, our Main Street businesses, not only where shoppers are coming from, but also where are the gaps in our market? What are people leaving town to buy, so that they can investigate maybe new product lines or expand their offerings. And then certainly that new, looking at new retail because of that demand outlook, we're able to see where shoppers come from, where they're going, and where else they're filling those retail needs. The last area I thought I'd touch on a little bit is our housing work. Right now, Iowa Economic Development Authority has got a great program. The Workforce Housing Tax Credit Program is really helping to get units developed. So the corridor was a part of developing the housing study for Spencer. And when that was done, we were told that we needed 351 new units. 184 of those would be owner-occupied and 167 renter units, showing up at about $95 million in investment. Again, that's been a few years ago, so prior to some of the cost increases. But again, if we look at economic development scenarios and growth like we're trying to see, that really could grow to 712 new units that we need. So we have been working with SCDC and the city on that housing strategy and making sure that we've got things done on our end to make it attractive for housing development. So of that investment needed, though, as we mentioned, the goal was 167 single-family units. 39 have been built to date. And of the 184 multifamily, just 12. So we've got some work to do. But we have seen some great projects throughout the community, and the city is again working to make property available. So go ahead.
Exactly, and I wanted to jump in here with regard to the housing tax credit program. I was just at a Northwest Iowa League of Cities meeting in Sheldon last week, and we met with several of the state legislators. And one of the things that was really talked about and really stressed to the state legislators was to keep the housing tax credit program going, and if anything, to expand it, because housing is a critical piece that we need in our communities, and especially in rural Iowa, to entice people to come in, and for employers to know that if they are going to expand, that their employees are going to have a place to live. So that message got out to our state legislators in a very big way last week, without
That is
question.
great.
Yeah.
So one of the things I love about that program too is that while the state's involved, sometimes that gets a little scary when you're looking at state and federal programming. It's not income qualifying. It really truly is workforce housing for our police and our nurses and young professionals getting started. So it's a great way to bring new units to the market without all of that long-term commitment that we sometimes see with
Right.
federal programming.
Exactly.
So really exciting.
Yeah.
Just to kind of wrap up a few administrative notes, the corridor is going through a new 5-year strategic planning process, so we're excited with that. Not only did COVID kind of take groups off task a little bit, but everything's so different and how we do things. So we are planning. Also, we're working on a marketing plan to really strengthen our resident recruitment. We're hearing our employers talk about workforce being a critical need right now, and we just have to tell our story. We've got wonderful communities. All of our communities are very different, but we need to make sure that we're telling our story and putting that message in the right places. We also are very excited. Coming up on November 16th is the Corridor's annual business recognition event. So you will get to hear an update about what's happened at the Corridor. We hand out awards that day. We have young professional, entrepreneur, large business awards. And then our speakers for the day, we're going with a pair. Iowa Area Development Group is going to be out, and Rand Fisher, who has transitioned out, and his replacement, Bruce Newsom, will be out. So we'll really be talking about the economic development ecosystem. While we're seeing so many projects come our way, the building searches have been incredible, from 10 to 100,000 square feet. Our building inventory is exhausted with our spec buildings and things. So they'll be talking about how all the partners, city, utilities, counties, come together for a strong economic development organization. And really, it's just a great day of networking as well to get to see so many folks throughout the corridor. So.
Okay. Well, and I really appreciate Shannon coming in today and talking about the work that the corridor does. And I want to thank not only Shannon, but her team. She's got an excellent team at the corridor, and all that they do for not just Spencer and Clay County, but they do work in a regional way. And and that always brings up some questions, but I think as a region, if we succeed, we're going to help the other counties around us and vice versa. So it's a very good situation. So thanks again, Shannon, for coming in and sharing about economic development opportunities and what's going on in the corridor. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
So now we get to go to some other topics, and high on everybody's list is trick or treat night. And we're going to start off the October update with trick or treat. And that comes up Monday, October 31st, and the hours that the city has set is 5 to 7 on Monday. Those are recommended hours. Now, if people's porch lights are on after 7 o'clock, feel free to go up to those houses as well. And I think that those people participating in Trick or Treat will have their porch lights on. So 5 to 7, October 31st, next Monday. Secondly, I'd like to talk just a little bit about an event that occurred in Spencer last week, and it was a pretty big deal, actually. The Spencer Main Street and director Nancy Nave hosted the Main Street Fall Workshop, and there were 60 or so Main Street directors from throughout the state of Iowa who gathered here in Spencer. I had the privilege of greeting them last Tuesday morning at the Spencer Community Theater where they held their workshops. And what a great way to showcase our community. The weather was great. I don't know who was in charge of planning that, but the weather was great for the most part. And they had just a wonderful time. They had several events scheduled throughout the 2 days that they were here, and I got in on one of the tours. They divided the participants up into several groups and toured downtown Spencer to show what's going on in downtown Spencer. And I was able to catch one of the groups, and we toured 3 stores in Spencer and what they were doing. And to a person, they had so many good things to say about our community and what's going on in our community downtown and throughout the city as a whole. It was very good for me to hear that, and I just wanted to pass that on to the citizens because we should be proud of our downtown. We should be proud of our community. In the first week of October, my wife Marty and I had an opportunity to take a week, and we went on a little road trip. And it was in the Midwest and down into the South, and we had a nice time. We saw a lot of interesting country. But what I wanted to mention was the fact that when you go to other parts of the United States and even in the Midwest and our neighbors to the south, and you look at the kind of community that we have with a very vibrant and vital Main Street, and you don't see that everywhere, folks. You just don't see it. There's a lot of downtowns that are struggling throughout the Midwest and other parts of the country. And I think that we cannot take our community for granted. And if we look at other places, we have to see how fortunate we are to have people in place who are taking leadership roles in moving this community forward on a daily basis. And you know, it's Main Street, it's the Chamber, it's the corridor, it's the school system, it's SMU, and it's all of the other entities that are out there too, and the people who are doing volunteer work and the service organizations, and the list just goes on and on. We have a very vibrant community, and that's what it takes in order to propel us forward. And you can see that, but sometimes it takes leaving your community and seeing what's going on in other communities to see what you really have. Thirdly, in the month of October, city officials, elected officials did a couple of facility tours, and I think actually one may have been in September, but we commissioned a firm to look at the facilities that within the city, and I'm talking about like the parks and the central garage for public works, the police department, the library, etc. So we're looking at city-owned facilities and looking to see what those facilities have, if they are meeting the needs of the community, if they're meeting the needs of the employees, etc. Now, we didn't look at City Hall, obviously, because it's relatively new, about 3 years old or something like that, and when it was recently renovated. But the tour to me was relatively eye-opening, without question. Many of our facilities are older. They do not necessarily do the job that they were originally intended to do. For instance, our central garage, where our public works is housed, many of the trucks and the equipment that we now have are outsized for what that facility was intended for, and what the vehicles and everything 50 years ago were designed for. So we have to take a look at these facilities, and we're going to have more information coming out about what that facility study does. But it was really good for the elected officials, for city officials, to go into our city-owned facilities and see exactly what we have right now, so that when that facility study comes out, we're going to have better eyes on that, I believe. So I'm excited to see what is going to come out of that, and that should be coming relatively soon. And speaking of public works, many of you have noticed that since the last mayor's update, that the 4th Street detour is still in place. Now, I think I said at the September mayor's update that might last only about another week or so. Well, ran into some complications. Now, remember, this is an SMU and a city project. It's a joint project. And we ran into some issues underground, and that's not unusual on projects like this. It seems like over the years, when we tend to dig things up, we find things that we didn't necessarily expect to encounter. And I think that's really what happened here. But that project is moving along relatively good now. Now, we've had 0.03 of an inch of rain in October up until yesterday, and then when they start to pour concrete, of course, it rained. But so that set us back a little bit. Now, I'm not going to give an exact date when the 4th Street will be open, but hopefully within a week or so. So hang in there. That project is going to be completed here soon. Another thing that we had going on in October was a long-term planning committee, and the long-term planning committee is chaired by Councilman Lauren Reet. And Councilman Reet put together a committee meeting that was really a presentation from a lot of the community's economic development partners that was basically structured to go to the business community in Spencer and the bankers, as well as the public at large. But Councilman Reet had the city, the corridor, the chamber, and Main Street, all of our economic development partners, talking about what was going on in those various entities and highlighting what they are doing with regard to economic development. And it was very, very enlightening, I think, to get all of those folks in one room and to see how everybody is really pulling in the same direction with regard to growing Spencer. So my compliments and hats off to Councilman Reet for getting that put together and showing us where we're headed. And I think that from that evening, it's very evident that we are moving in the right direction in terms of economic development. Also, in October, there was a very interesting presentation at Sacred Heart Church put on by Sister Shirley Finnernan, who is the head of the Lila May House in Sioux City. And basically what the Lila May House deals with is women who have been involved in and abused by sex traffickers. It was a very enlightening and educational evening, I think, for everyone, especially parents and grandparents, and as well as the general public. But what Sister Shirley really talked about was sex trafficking and also labor trafficking. And it sometimes I think that in rural Iowa, maybe we tend to think that we are maybe immune from a lot of these types of things, but we're really not. And I think that what Sister Shirley did was she gave us the warning signs and what to look for and how this affects people and how we can really help. So it was very well attended presentation, and hopefully everyone took away something from that. Along those same lines, in January, the city is planning on having a panel discussion with some experts with regard to social media and our children and the protections that parents can take with regard to kids. And also, some of those folks are working in conjunction with the school to offer a program for teachers and kids as well. So there'll be more coming on that in the near future. Yesterday, we had a very interesting conversation with school officials, and there were a couple of elected officials, Councilman Nelson, Councilman Orson, myself, and city staff, along with the school officials, talking about the Fairview tennis courts. And I may have mentioned this last month, that the Fairview tennis courts are in a very bad state of repair. And so the conversation has been for quite some time, what do we do with those? Because they're almost to a point where they are unplayable. And it seems like there is becoming more and more interest in tennis, but not only tennis, but also pickleball. So the school and the city basically jointly are talking about replacing those Fairview courts and perhaps moving them over by the middle school. Now, even if they're by the middle school, they would certainly be open to the general public for play, whether it's tennis or whether it's pickleball. One of the things that we're trying to come to some sort of agreement, and I think we are pretty much in agreement, that we need to use a post-tension concrete. And this is, I'm certainly no engineer, and I don't know all the ins and outs of surfaces for tennis courts, but this is a longer lasting surface that requires much less maintenance. And I believe that our neighbors to the north in Spirit Lake have these, and they put them in 20 years ago or so, and they have required virtually no maintenance. So this project is moving forward. We have not bid the project yet or anything. Hopefully, we're going to do that in the very near future, and we'll see where those bids come in, and hopefully we can get this project going very, very soon. Next on the mayor's update, several people have commented to me about the construction that's going on at the North Mall in the Iowa Lakes Community College parking lot, and also over across the street, across Highway 71 actually, in the QRS area. There's no structures that are going to be built there. Those are basically, this is a water quality project, those are basically bioretention cells. And if this is to kind of safeguard for our storm sewer situation, because when we get a hard rain, if we ever get those in the future, we haven't had many of those this year, but all of the debris and water runs off those parking lots and into the storm water and clogs things up and so forth. These bioretention cells will kind of sift that and slow things down to a certain extent, and it will enhance the sewer system that we have at this point. Another thing, just a couple of events an event coming up, is the fire department is having a push-in ceremony. Now, fire department bought a new fire truck recently, and that fire truck is going to be commissioned. And the push-in ceremony is a traditional ceremony that fire departments do, and it's going to happen at 9 o'clock Sunday morning. There will be a little program, coffee and donuts. If you come a little earlier than 9 o'clock, and I'm sure Chief Kanyon will have a few words to say before the actual push-in ceremony. This Friday, we're going to have the official opening of the rocket slide. The rocket slide is open, and thanks to a lot of folks in the community for their hard work and fundraising on this particular project. Now, that project or that ceremony is going to happen this Friday at 10 a.m. at the rocket slide. However, we're also planning to have a recognition ceremony when the weather is a little nicer next year during Flag Fest, so that those people who worked hard on this project and were instrumental in the rehabilitation of the rocket slide will be able to be honored, and hopefully a lot of folks who enjoyed the rocket slide as kids will be coming back to Spencer for Flag Fest, and they can be part of that recognition as well. At the last council meeting, I mentioned that about the concerns that council and myself had been getting with regard to the odor situation on the west side of town from Simrise, the egg processing company. And as I said then, we have, as a city, been in conversation with them about the mitigation of that odor. And I asked City Manager Dan Gifford if he would be in conversation with them and give us an update on a weekly basis. And I can tell you now that that is going on. We are in conversations with them. We will be giving I will be giving a report at the first council meeting in November about what's going on and the mitigation and how they're coming along meeting those particular goals. The other thing I wanted to mention was the Northwest Iowa League of Cities meeting, and I did briefly touch on that when Shannon was giving her update on the corridor, but Councilman Orison and City Manager Gifford and I attended the meeting over in Sheldon, and it was a very good meeting. We met with lots of legislators from throughout the area, and excuse me, basically it was just good conversation, good back and forth with regard to what the legislature is doing or planning on doing with regard to cities next year. And we expressed some of our concerns with regard to the legislature and upcoming possible state legislation. So there'll be more to come on that as well. So with that, again, I'd like to thank Shannon Landauer for her report today, for coming in. And with that, I will close and just wish everyone take care and do good. Thank you very much.